All right, friends, how's it going? Zig coming in at the top of the interview. Today I have Zack Freidhof with me. This guy is just an inspiring, thought-provoking individual. Not only is he a super talented musician, songwriter, and someone who's just relentlessly creative, but he's an active peace worker and has done so much to bring the music community and the yoga community and the creative community together. He's playing virtual shows CLE Friday, 8 p.m. If you guys hear anything you like, if you can rate, review, comment, leave anything you want on the podcast site, it really helps these artists get heard and helps us put their voices up front. I appreciate it. Without further ado, Zack Freidhof. All right, let's do this. Zig At The Gig podcast. I'm hanging out with Zack Freidhof. How's it going, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Not bad. How's quarantine been for you? You can't see me. I just noticed most of my friends who have done this with, like, this is all set up on a piano, right? So everything's like lands avalanching onto the ground. But
Nice.
but how's quarantine been for you, my friend?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of everything. You
Yeah.
know, all the emotions, all the time. But overall, there's a lot of great opportunities to rest and to be and to meditate and sing and walk. So I appreciate all those things.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's usually everyone's darting from one thing to the next, especially a guy as busy as you. I was checking out like your gig register, my friend. You definitely stay busy with all the things you're involved with. And so I guess have some time to sit back and like take it in and be creative. It's a blessing.
Yeah, rest is really important. And I don't know. This last couple years, I think I've been noticing, myself included, a lot of folks just super busy, just having no time to do anything that they want to do, just feeling rushed, feeling as though they're just nowhere near enough hours in the day, every single day.
Hold on. I lost you there for a second. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's maybe a. Can you hear me all right, Zach?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, cool. I don't know. Maybe the something was something happened in monitor. It peaked out. So the last few years, everyone's been kind of busy.
Yeah, there's just a lot of busyness. A lot of conversations I've been having with people were about how hectic and crazy, and that they wish that they could take a step back and slow down. And so here's the wish come true in a very unusual, unexpected way.
Yeah, as awful as the reason is, it is kind of good to have some time to like sleep in, man. Sit back and not have to be like, when's the next thing?
Yeah, it's been awesome to not have to open my calendar at all.
Yeah, just like it's fine. And you've been streaming a lot, man. You've been hitting the stream scene, so you're staying busy. How's that been as far as switching over to the digital realm of like gigging?
It's different. It's good. It's a nice way to stay in some kind of connection with people, and just help me to continue singing. I love singing, and so I'm going to be doing it whether or not anyone's watching. So it is nice to kind of have that outlet still. And it gives me some other opportunities. Like, I've been doing, some of the stream shows have been like a specific record that I've released over the years or something. So it's been kind of nice.
Oh, that's cool.
I probably would do something like that like once a year if they were live in front of people. And so it's kind of been fun to go back and do that, a lot more often.
What was it? I was going to say, man, you got, as far as records, man, you got a lot. You put out a lot of stuff. Like,
I have, yeah.
Creativity just
wrapping up
exudes.
I write a lot, yeah. My 22nd record I was slated to come out in May. We'll see what happens if it still does or not. But
Was it? Yeah, I was reading something. You did something with Gretchen.
I did. Yeah, last year we released a record called Shyla, which was...
Okay, so that was 21st record, not 22nd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, got it. But yeah, so Shyla?
So Shyla, my friend Gretchen Plus, an amazing singer-songwriter, and she produced the record with me, and I wrote it all out west in places that really inspired me, and so the whole record is kind of an homage to wild spaces, wilderness, whether that's outer wilderness or the inner wilderness. Um, it's just kind of that sort of opportunity to
Yeah.
to look within and to meditate on those spaces that captivate and draw our imagination and challenge us.
Wow. Sounds like a cool. So like you would go spot to spot, write the tune within that realm, kind of try to capture that in a song, and then you tracked it, or did you track it during the in that space? So I don't know.
No, I
I phrased
tracked
that
it.
weird. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I tracked it afterwards.
Got it.
They were all written in the spaces, but I brought it back to Akron into a studio, and
Nice.
we had time to play with it, and had a lot of folks that I've worked with over the years, or folks that I've wanted to work with, that were able to come and play various things on it. So it's I don't think I've ever been more proud of a project that I've been a part of, and it still to this day kind of gives me tears and chills, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever done.
That's awesome. How far west you go?
Well, I go all over the country. For this project, I feel really drawn to the Teton Mountains in Wyoming, which is
Okay.
part of the Yellowstone
Wow. Yeah.
ecosystem.
Cool,
And so
man.
I get to spend some time out there every year doing shows and hiking and just kind of enjoying life a little bit. And so I really I felt called to create something for a few years, and it was just the right time.
Nice. So when you're touring, are you doing a lot of solo stuff, or are you doing the full band? Because you got a big ensemble. It looked like 10-piece or something, like something.
Yeah, the band varies. It's usually a 5 piece, but it's gone up to about 11 depending on the events and things. Usually, whenever I tour around, it's solo. The band has gotten kind of around Ohio, but hasn't done a whole lot outside of that. But
Gotcha.
I do a lot of solo shows, or I hook up with other songwriters, and we'll do kind of shows together, or a few folks that we can kind of do duet sets and things. But
Oh, that's cool. Was Gretchen one?
we've not had a chance to tour together yet. Hopefully, we were sort of working on it. And then she released her record, and we put those plans on hold a little bit. And
Gotcha.
now, I mean, all touring plans are pretty much
Well,
indefinitely.
yeah, it's hard, man. And do you do all your booking? Are you the guy? You run the whole show?
Dude, I do have
That's
all the hats.
nice.
All the hats.
That's a blessing, and it's a headache. But like with that, you know what I mean? When you're
Yeah,
booking to go out, you got like there's like that magic medium. You can't go too far out. Like if you reach out to a venue like 6 months in advance, they're gonna be like, "Whoa, not booking that far out." And if you reach out to them a month in advance, they're like, "Whoa, you should have reached out 6 months ago." So it's
yeah.
like,
It's a challenge to find that medium, and everybody has a different timetable typically, and so it's kind of one of those things. You start like anywhere between 6 months or a year out, and you just kind of whittle it down
yeah,
towards then. And I always leave
that's
a few dates that are open for whatever spontaneous kind of things might happen. And I've ended up having some really awesome house concerts, or just last minute shows that have come together through those little holes. And I think that's been a real blessing for me.
those are usually the best. The DIY spots, the house
Mhm.
venues. That's when you meet the people that really want to hear what you have to say and are really into what you're doing. Like, and
Yep.
and they
Yep.
always
That.
pop up. Like that's the thing. Um, what's weird about it is like, or at least now, like trying to book a tour now would be fried. Everything about it would just go to shit until all this gets worked out because of the just how the nature of everything right now. But I guess in a way that's a lead into this cool digital network. Um, one thing I wanted to ask you about was you do not just music, you do a lot. Like you do was it you're a yoga instructor and you do kirtan? Or you have a
Yeah,
couple kirtan albums.
I do. I have a couple kirtan albums. I lead kirtan fairly often. I do a weekly morning chant on Facebook,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
do a lot of other kirtan events in the area. And I've been doing a number of streaming meditations and kirtan things during this time frame as well. And it's been a real nice blessing for me just to help hold me accountable to my own practice a little bit more.
So it's like streaming with the music and streaming with the meditation. It's sharing the
Yeah,
practice. How's it been
yeah.
like the reaction to a streaming a meditation? Is it similar to like streaming a playing? Is it like a, because I imagine when you like, if you're leading a meditation or if you're leading a group in meditation, there's kind of the room connection. I've gone to a couple Buddhist temples out in Cleveland. I'm from Cleveland. And like there's something in the room, you know what I mean? There's a sense that you're with this whole group and you're doing this you're on this journey in it together. It's weird. So like I haven't tuned into anyone doing it digitally, or like I've never even thought about how that would how that would go. How's it been?
It's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. There's certainly, nothing at all that is like that in-person experience. And when you have a group of people together the same space, um, there that's a really powerful experience. And nothing digitally is ever going to really capture that. But that said, it's been really beautiful, the meditations that I've either led or that I've been a part of or I've watched over this time. And you can still get quite a bit out of it. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily get the group thing, but there's still kind of a group thing. You realize that there's 40 other people watching with you, or 100 other people watching, or whatever it might
Jeez.
be.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get the sense that there's a community, even though you can't really be right there feeling them, feeling their breathing and things. But
Yeah.
you can kind of still tap into it, and it's an interesting exercise, actually. I mean, can you still feel the connection even though you're not sitting there with them? Can we still feel that?
Yeah, that's
And
interesting. That's
on the
interesting.
better times, I think we can.
Yeah. What brought you to Curtin? It's kind of a particular practice, I think, as far as like meditation.
Yeah. So I've been singing as what I do for the last like 21 years or so, and at some point about 10 years ago or so, I got introduced into yoga and
Yeah.
just fell in love with it. And when I found out that there was chanting and singing as kind of a whole yogic meditation path, it just sort of blew my mind, and it felt exactly where I needed to be. So ever since I'd heard about it, I have been learning and doing as much as I can to share that practice and that experience with people. And it's such a beautiful practice. A lot of it's in Sanskrit or maybe one of the derivations of that. So there's this element of, if you're new to it, or if you only know a handful of mantras, there's this element of not really knowing what's going on or what's being said. And there's kind of a beauty in that. You can tune off that part of the mind that's analyzing everything, that's saying, oh, this word means this, and that brings this image to my mind, and that means I should feel this. And it's kind of nice to have just the vibrations of the words going through and allow your mind to go a little bit deeper than where it would otherwise. And if you know the mantras, you can tune into things differently, as well too. I think there's just something really beautiful about letting a repeated idea happen, and going with it. We tend to allow our minds to repeat, the negative aspects of things. That's usually what's repeated all the time, of worry and fear and not good enough and all those things. So it's really beautiful opportunity to let the mind repeat, some of the positive aspects over and over until we start to, really feel them and understand them.
That's well said. I agree with that. I definitely think your mind's like, dude, you fucked up that chord. What? You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
whatever you
Yeah.
do that's not calculated as executed right, your mind keeps
Yep.
bringing that up. They're like, dude, you did the thing peaked earlier in this conversation. Why'd that? You know what I mean? This thing,
Yep.
your mind keeps that loop going, and like, and for me, I found a really profound like a new a new way to experience music when listening to music that I don't understand the language to. Kirtan, music from Africa, music for wherever. If the language is a different language, I don't understand. I'm listening to the whole thing differently, and it's like they kind of bring up. You're not being hung up on what they're trying to say or what they're verbally trying to convey, and you start to like kind of absorb this the song as a whole or the movement as a whole, and you're like, it's a different perspective. And if someone like who like yourself, like who's been singing for, you said 21 years, or who's been playing music forever, you start to get in this rut of like analyzing anything. Oh, it's a 2-5-1 and it's a ballad, you know what I mean? And okay, yeah, that line refers to that other thing Johnny Cash said 2 years, or you know, whatever. Like you start to like analyze it more as opposed to just being in it and kind of like absorbing it and taking it for what it is. So there is something about not understanding what's being said that makes an experience fresh when it's a positive thing, when it's in a good way. Maybe if you're at a border or something, it would be bad. But that's cool, man. Like, yeah, I found there's this place in Cleveland called the Studio, and I remember going to a kirtan there and being like, this is like the best part of the concert. You know what I mean? When the to my mind, it took me back to this Tom Petty concert I went to where like everyone was just singing Free Fallin' back and forth. And I was like, it's like that part, cut out the rest of the thing, and you're just doing this really cool call and response, and you get to hear this whole you know what I mean? It's kind of slimming the fat and doing the really cool bit.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so like when you started the practice of yoga, was it just like how'd that come about? Was it a friend like, yo, come with me to this thing I'm doing, you might like it? Or did you like kind of like were longing for something and you're like, I'll try that type of thing?
Kind of a mix of both.
Yeah.
I had been meditating for a few years prior to that. So I was not unfamiliar with meditation.
Gotcha.
And I was kind of interested in just general Buddhist thought at the time. And, you know, I had read several of the Dalai Lama's books and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And so I had some general, you know, understanding, I guess, of some of those things. And so at that point, a friend had said, you know, hey, come to this yoga class. And it was just a simple physical class kind of thing. But it really opened up some doors for me, I thought, of just how I was thinking and experiencing about a lot of things. And so I got really intrigued with, you know, okay, so yoga is more than this posture that I'm doing right now. And what is that? And what does that look like? And so that opened up the giant rabbit hole that I am still falling through delightfully of, you know, the giant ancient tradition of all things yogic, all things that bring us towards a greater connection and a greater unity.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, well, it's wild to kind of so if you went into it with that mindset, you're gonna kind of see that practice where some people kind of see it as like burn fat yoga, you know what I mean? Like, or you know, a quick fix or a quit fit. But if you're going into it with that kind of mindset already, with I guess the pre-rec for like how yoga actually is, like you're gonna get that experience out of it, which is really cool. What kind of blows my mind is how old like those postures are. Like there was this really cool exhibit at the Cleveland Art Museum.
That was awesome. That was a great exhibit.
Okay, yeah, that was really cool. Like that blew my mind. I didn't realize how old just like a picture of a guy bending down. You know what I mean? Like. But in that's not the part that really matters. It's going into that with that pre-rec, and then that becomes an extension of it. But wow, that's cool, man. What brought you to like getting into Buddhist stuff? Like, was there something like in high school where you're like a teacher was like, check this out, or what brought that to you?
Self-study. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
bit of it probably was one of the first musical things that really inspired me was the Beatles.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, and I got I was just really fascinated with kind of the more spiritual, mythical aspects of
Gotcha.
some of what they did, and um, so as I would read more about them and learn more about John Lennon, then I kind of learned about their whole uh, time with Mahesh Yogi, and sort of the meditation that they
Yeah.
had done, and um, that kind of led me a little bit towards experience, like searching out some of the books, and I think that the Dalai Lama was a bit more accessible
Yeah,
than
definitely.
some of the other texts to me at the time, and so that was sort of one of the jumping off points that I had. And and around that same time, I was also getting um, really inspired by Gandhi, and so I think those two worlds were kind of colliding pretty
Gotcha.
close to there. And so the more I read about Gandhi, the more I wanted to know about his practices and his um, spiritual conducts and codes and things. And I think that opened up an awful lot of these doors too.
That makes sense. Have you read his autobio, Gandhi's?
It's amazing.
It's
Yeah.
a dense book, man. There's like a couple, like that's a big one. In high school, I kind of went on the same kick too. I'd read like an autobio. Someone would refer to a book within that book, right? And then you have to go find that source text and like kind of tear it apart. And like,
Yep.
so for me, like kind of tracing where things come from, that just clicks a thing that's like dopamine. Ha! I've heard of that one too. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So at this time, you when did music come in? So like, did you start playing guitar, and then like you had a thing with your appendix, right? That kind of made made music the focus. Like
I did.
I was listening to an interview you did on, I think it was on YouTube somewhere. Where you said you wanted to do basketball. That was kind of like, is this true? Am I hearing it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As all the way up until high school, basketball was my sole thing.
Yeah.
I loved it. I like ate and breathed basketball, and played all the time. And I was okay, but I never would have been anything super great, I don't think. But when I was getting into high school, my appendix ruptured, and it took a long time for the doctors to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
And so it should have killed me. It pretty close to tried to. And so I was in the hospital, and I had a fairly long recovery, and I was definitely not going to be playing basketball that year. Like the time frame of when this all happened, there was just no way that was going to work. And so it was a big life shift of, this thing that you've been breathing every day is not going to happen, at least for a year. It's clearly not going to happen. But some friends brought me music to cheer me up.
Like what? What was something? Were they bringing records, or are they bringing you stuff to play?
Bringing me cassettes.
Nice.
There's no music in my family. Like my family likes to listen to music, and I feel like they had a really great taste in music. They definitely, my dad especially, got to see so many shows growing up, and whenever he would say, "Oh yeah, I saw them at this little 50-person dive bar somewhere," and just like, "Oh man, you got to see that. You got to see them."
Who was some of the dudes?
So, I mean, they saw just about everybody, like everybody from the Motown era, like Stevie Wonder and James Brown and the Talking Heads. And my very first concert, when my mom was 9 months pregnant with me, they went and saw Prince and James Brown, or Rick James. And so,
oh man!
So I feel like that is probably what made me what I am today.
That's why you're so funky.
I think so. But yeah, so But as far as like musical performing ability or interest in music, like there's just as far as we've ever searched in our family tree, we've never found anyone else that has it. So it's always saved up for me. But they brought me in some music to sort of cheer me up, and it was someone brought me in the White Album from the
Nice.
Beatles, and
Okay.
I'd heard some of the songs before because I did like to listen to the Oldies channel, and that
Yeah.
was, but it's just never really. I guess I'd never had the focus to just sit and actually listen. It was always I was doing something else when the music was on, and so something just really came over me, and I was so moved. I left the hospital and was immediately like, I need to play an instrument. I want to play music. I want to play music. And, my family was very confused for a while. And when I first got my hands on a guitar, I just wouldn't put it down. And
That's
so
awesome. So,
like a solid year passed before I even like let it out of my hands.
that's wow, man. Like, so okay, so the White Album, that's kind of, I'm trying to think of like in high school what my friends would have brought me, and I don't think it would be cool like that. What I mean? My friends, I don't think would be dropping me some cool stuff, because I kind of went into high school being the music like guy. I gotta, what, dude, have you heard of Jimi Hendrix? You know what I mean? So coming like
Sure.
that's interesting that you had all this focus and all this like drive to do one thing, which was basketball, and then like they kind of being able to shift it and hear like, I think that kind of makes a lot of sense why you can do this why that meditation practice is so important. It seems like it was almost kind of a prereq to what led you into music, is just being in there and hearing it, like
Yeah,
maybe
for sure.
on the subconsciously or whatever. But wow, because man, in high school, when you think like a year in high school, that's like forever. Like you're not going to play basketball for a year. That's fucking forever. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I didn't have, a huge friend group or anything. So most of my activity was kind of all built around, going to school and then
yeah,
basketball. So like taking out a large chunk of that was kind of, pretty much meant that like I wasn't going to be around a whole group of people that were sort of my only, other social interactions. So it was definitely a big deal, but music, I don't feel like I missed any of it.
yeah.
Music just came right in. So
When you were first that year or whatever, when the guitar didn't leave your hands, how were you like? Did you have like guidance? Did you take lessons at all, or did you just figure this out type deal?
pretty much just figured it out. I think
Yeah.
I took like a lesson, but I found, listened to a lot of music and just tried to pick stuff up.
Were you picking apart
That
those
way,
Beatles tunes?
was trying to pick apart some of the Beatles tunes. I think I first started picking apart Green Day because 3 chords is a
There
whole
you
lot
go.
easier
Yeah.
than like
Nice.
20. um,
Yeah.
and but yeah, I mean, I found a lot of those things, and I've looked up sheet music kind of whenever I could. I can't
Yeah.
read music, but I can do a little bit of the tab stuff, and
Gotcha.
so just tried to learn whatever I could and try to develop my ear enough that I could just sort of hear something, be like, oh, I think it sounds like they're doing this. And if I couldn't figure it out, I would just sit there and like play every string until I found
Well,
notes that
process
made
of
sense.
elimination. It's one of them's got to be right. There's only 6.
Yeah.
How many
Yeah,
options
like-
can that be?
Yeah. Looks like they're doing it. I have a video of them and I'm just like studying, like, what are they doing? How's that possible? How's that happening?
That's
Where's that magic coming from?
Isn't it crazy when you're watching a video, like when you first start and you're watching a video, you're like, all right, it's between the double dot and the third second dot. It happens in between there. Like, how many options can that be? And it's so
Yeah.
many. And the more you learn how the thing works, you're like, oh, I can do it here, here, here. It doesn't really matter where. It's just, because my first
Yeah.
lesson was kind of like, for when my brother had a guitar laying around, I'm like, I want to figure this out. And like, as soon as I took a couple lessons just to figure out how you make a note, you know what I mean? How do you
Okay.
do you push down the metal or do you push down between the metal? And
Right.
after I kind of got that, I feel it. You just go down that rabbit hole and you just figure out things, and the brain starts clicking, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. Did you jump to writing your own stuff because of this way of figuring out the guitar?
Yeah. I was writing stuff right away. Making things up when I had no idea, like just, off, like just chaotic sounding, whatever, wherever my hands would go, and just writing stuff and making things up. I think I'd always enjoyed writing. Like even as
Yeah.
a little kid, I was always excited about creative writing and writing little stories. And I read all the time, even from pretty young age. And so I think it just seemed really natural that I would just be writing things.
So is there the need to create, or the wanting to? That's
Yep.
interesting, man. I like there's there's a certain thing to, like, when you're figuring it out and you're like you're playing something, you don't think anyone's ever done that thing before. Me and my bass player were having this conversation where they're like, oh, no one's ever, he was like, no one's ever not played with a pick. This is it, man. You know what I mean? I'm gonna make my own style. Yeah. But when you're that, like, fresh into it, everything's like an open door. And I think that's like an important mindset to try to keep throughout. Like, for someone like you, you've written 21 albums. Like, there are 21 albums worth of material, let me put it that way, which is a lot of writing. Like, what, how how do you not, like, do you got like a practice you do as far as writing, or do you just never stop?
It's mostly kind of never stopping. Yeah. Just writing. I write a lot. And, you know, some of it is stuff that I like, and some of it is not good or not things that I like. And, you know, each song is kind of a process in itself, and it's kind of a bit of a learning practice. You know, and you definitely get into, I've definitely found times that I've gotten into kind of a rut of like, oh, I like these general chords, and, you know, I feel like this song reminds me of one of my other songs, or, you know, this melody is kind of going the same place. So this theme is, you know, a very similar theme to something else. And usually those are the times where I do what I can to get away from myself. So the very first time that I had an abundance of that feeling, I went out and created a kind of duets record. And the idea was, I got together with 17 other songwriter friends. Whoa. And we would, you know, write a song together and then record it as a duet kind of thing. And so it was just a really beautiful opportunity to have that, you know, whole new idea of writing, you know, put in, and just sort of being like, okay, well, we write very differently, and, you know, here's something I would never have written. And some of those are still some of my favorite songs, and some of them, you know, I don't play all that often, but it's, you know, it was really, really helpful for me, for the process, and to kind of hear some things and hear, you know, a different interpretation of chord progressions or of melody. And I think those have all strengthened me and helped me to grow. And it developed, you know, really beautiful friendships out of it all. And ever since then, I've really always enjoyed co-writing and opportunities to write with folks whenever I can. So that's been a big help. Another one, when I was writing Shyla, I really wanted it to be a different record than anything I'd done before. Like the emotion that was kind of coming through me, and the feeling of that physical space meant so much to me that I just didn't want it to be kind of, you know, more of the same. So one of the key things that I did for that was put my guitar in an open tuning. And I really didn't dabble much with open tunings prior, a lot because I play all the time, and I didn't want to have either, you know, multiple 5-minute tuning breaks or multiple guitars. And so I really kept a lot of that to a minimum. But for this, I felt like it just needed to have this big open tuning, this big open feel, to really try to begin to express what was going on. And I think that has also really helped open up some doors in my mind and in my abilities to, you know, it, like you were saying, that whole idea of where like everything was new. And it was just sort of like, you know, looking at this guitar and strumming and being like, you know, I know what a guitar is supposed to do, but I have no concept. Like, I don't know what these chords are. I don't know, you know, I could kind of, if I took 20 minutes, I could maybe figure out a key that it's in, sort of, but you know, like, I didn't really know what I was doing. And it was all just back to what sounds good. How does this sound? Like, what is making a sound that I want to hear right now? And so it was a really nice process to help bring me back to that beginner's mindset, and to that, you know, childlike awe and wonder.
Yeah. Wow. That's open tunings are a trip. I'm at that point where you said you didn't want to be. You didn't want to be the guy with multiple guitars. I'm the guy with multiple guitars.
Sure.
I play in a band called C level letter C dash, and the last
Okay.
record is all like, I got, okay, these 3 songs are out of open C. These 3 songs are out of open D. This one's in open F. Going to all these gigs with like 3 different guitars is dumb, but there's something to that open tune guitar that you get that, like how you're saying, that vast space with it. And like for the record, you when you were going to all these places that were vast, that sounds like an amazing way to capture that sound is bring the guitar there.
Yeah.
Like that's really
Yeah,
cool.
It worked out really well for that. It definitely helped to express what that was trying to express, and I found that I could express things, that I would never have been able to express in standard tune. Just some of the melodies or some of the little riffs that would come out of it are things that like I would never have even attempted to do in standard, but it just seemed like my fingers just wanted to do it in the open tuning. So it's I'm okay with having the 2 guitars at shows now.
Nice. Okay, so that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's funny because like I do a lot of house shows, and I've always I grew up on the coffee shop scene and things. So, it's always been like kind of this guy like set up in a corner somewhere. And I always felt kind of weird about having like 3, 4 guitars. It's like the guitars take up more room than I do. And I'm like already, just taking up like a table that's been pushed aside somewhere. So, it's easy for me to feel like I'm overwhelming an area, but I'm getting used to it.
With any of those gigs where you're like kind of like, oh, the music guy's here, no matter what, you get that feeling of all right, I'm kind of troubling you in a way, but you're paying me to be here, so kind of not. Like, and no matter what you do, I feel like you take up that table, or you have to ask that person to move from that table before you start, and it's that weird.
Yeah. Mutual trouble.
Yeah. I do a lot of bar gigs. I've done a lot of coffee gigs. Coffee ones are weird, like in a good way. Like I'd rather be around the caffeine. I feel like there's a more like active audience mentally, but maybe not. I don't know. But it's you gotta be quieter, which is weird. And at the bars, you gotta be louder. I don't know. It's a weird beverage volume ratio that that seems to be different in every spot. When did you start singing? Because for me, like the go from playing the guitar to singing was a weird, like with the guitar, I knew I was playing that note, right? I can visually see and I can tune that note to be the note I want it to be. So every time I put my finger on that fret, it's E or whatever. But singing, you got to kind of work that muscle. You got to learn to like feel E and eventually trust that you're singing it. So to me, it's always been like a more complicated endeavor, and like or just there's more to kind of like learn how to work, and it's not visual, it's not in front of you. So for me, it's kind of like, oh fuck, that's hard. Like, did you just naturally kind of jump into singing as well, or did you have to work that? Like, or was there a band you were in that the singer didn't show up? Or was there like a thing that brought out the singing in you? I guess.
I guess it's a little bit of all of the above. Like it was natural as far as when I first started playing, like I was making songs and stuff up. So I was already trying to sing along and play at the same time. I felt like both of those muscles were, working for me. As far as my voice itself goes, it's developed a lot and grown a lot over the years. So there's been a lot of work, of just coming more and more into my own voice and feeling comfort and, feeling just confidence in it.
Yeah.
But, I think that comes from any singer probably goes through that sort of stage. Sure. But it was, it's interesting because it is much more of an inner process. It's much more of a trusting. You have to just trust it. There's definitely like the guitar. There's, you can do exercises and you can do things to get yourself faster. To get, your transitions better, and you have some of those for the voice, but it's a lot more inner. You're kind of just sitting there being like, okay, I can go from here to here, but you're not like you're not watching it happen, and so it's a lot more of just having to let go of things and trust and learn to really trust this great instrument that we all have to one extent or another. So I think I was drawn to that as well. I love the meditative spiritual things always stick out to me, and so I feel like singing is a bit of that.
Definitely. And like even like that example from here to here, that's like, man, that's like you jumping a lot. If you played that on the guitar, that's like this many frets. You know what I mean? Like there's the voice just like bounces from one thing to another, and there's I think part of it is that going back to what we talked about earlier with that like you don't have a good voice. It doesn't sound like Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? There's this like perfection in singing that the human brain just like admires, and like it's hard to find that within yourself, I think, especially when you're learning. And like,
it's definitely a challenge. It's a challenge. I was really, I feel very grateful that when I was starting and learning to play, that voice was fairly silent for me. I feel like it's gotten louder over the years, but when I started out, luckily it was pretty quiet, and it was just like I'm learning, I'm figuring things out, and people had very supportive parents, which was, I'm so grateful and blessed for. And the very first open mic that I ever played at,
where was it?
Was at this little cafe in Parma that was called Southwest Cafe. I love
no way.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, man.
And it was, crazy back in the days when like 75 people would jam into a little coffee shop like every single, week. And, so I did this little open mic, and I played like my 3 or 4 songs, and at the end I got a standing ovation, and the owner came over and booked me for like monthly for the whole year. And I was like, this is pretty awesome. And so I felt like I was, I got a lot of good feedback early on, so I never really doubted
the direction.
The direction, or just that I was capable of doing something that was appreciative. That like obviously my voice and playing had to be okay enough that people appreciated it. Like, so my own little inner critic didn't, luckily was silent during those years. I'm sure it would have been a different world if it was louder. But now that I've done a lot more, I think it's tried to use its its voice a bit more. But it's always about growing and trying to see how I can best express, what is in my heart to express, and how I can best be some kind of use whatever this gift is for the benefit of others and for the benefit of peace and compassion and unity.
Well, that's awesome. Like there's a couple things I wanted to bring up, because you've gotten before I leave this topic, like, because to me, I get that mindset. You have a great voice, by the way. Like, I've been tuning into your live streams, and I'm like, I can, like, as someone, like, I listen to myself over and over and over and just try to sound okay. You know what I mean? Like, and like part of that's just me being like, I'm okay with me. So when I hear someone who's just like, that's great. You know what I mean? I know there's either like they just got it or they've put in the work. And like, it's awesome to hear that people put in the work. I don't know. To me, it makes me feel less crazy. So that's awesome. Who is running that mic night in Parma? Because I've done a bunch of nights in Parma, but this was probably before I was hitting some mic nights.
Probably was. Don't remember who was running that first one, but some of the early ones that I went to, there was a guy named Charlie Brown who
he's a clown.
I can't say enough about Charlie. Charlie was one of the huge first like real mentors that I ever had, and he ran a number of open mics around Northeast Ohio, and he was from Ohio and went out to Hollywood and got to play in like the 70s with, he'd have all these ridiculous stories of playing with Jackson Browne and David Crosby and all these, crazy, the scene, the crazy scene that
heavy hitter.
So he's a songwriter, guitarist back then, and the lifestyle got to be too much, and he had an opportunity to come back here. And when he came back here, he noticed that there was far fewer places for people to play, and so he kind of set about for his mission to go around and try to open up as many doors to music as he could. And I forget what it was, but I know at one point he had told me that he had been instrumental in getting like 200 some venues to have
Mic
live
nights?
music as part of their, whether they're open mic nights or just some live music. And he ended up running a whole number of open mics, and
That's amazing.
I was pretty new to everything at the time, and so he was really so kind, and would always try to pull me aside and share any kind of insights or wisdom about getting gigs, or about business aspects of things that were necessary, or when I was getting ready to record, and how to kind of go about some of those things. So he really helped show me the ropes of a lot of it, and helped kind of steer me clear of maybe some of the more negative people and situations that there could be, especially starting out. And he it was such a beautiful experience to sort of watch his open mics, because he would give the same level of care and attention to every performer that got up there. And since then I've been to a number of open mics, and there's a range of hosts. Some hosts like turn the PA on, and then they go in the back and drink. And then it's like, oh, the next guy's up, and they just make sure that there isn't like feedback, or that the mic's on, and that's kind of it. And then you have people like Charlie, who just wanted, like, all he wanted was for people to have like the sound and feel as good as they possibly could for their allotted time. And so he would sit there the whole time and like tweak the EQ or put some reverb in, and just kind of like really help dial people in. And so it ended up getting to a point where like there would be everybody loved his open mic. And so it would be folks that were really well established in the scene would come out and play. And, people like me that have, never, we're super new, or, people just learning, so it was a whole mesh of people. And so it brought this beautiful community together where, I feel like it's very rare for an open mic to have that kind of community, where the real seasoned, established musicians are there with the brand new people, and they both are interacting. And there was a lot of opportunities for the newer folks to get opening gigs, or to get other kind of gigs or help, or just even have somebody that you kind of look up to. It's like, wow, they're playing the big club, and like they just said that I sounded good, or they liked the song I played, or something, and like that is just a huge experience. And I don't see it enough nowadays, honestly, but it was really helpful for me, and I'm so grateful for that whole experience.
The mic night host definitely make or breaks the scene that comes through. And like the mic nights that stick around, you can tell they're either the venue itself has its own draw, but for the most part, mic nights that stick around, the host is doing something right. And because that's what it is. It's supposed to be an open door for you to get out there and try what you've never done before, and feel encouraged to come back and do it again, or hopefully leave with some more self-esteem, or turning down the volume on the fear that you came in there with. Like if a mic night host is doing that, they're still around. And there's some good ones out here in Cleveland. There's some real good guys that your friend Charlie, or Charlie Brown, your friend Charlie. There's some of those archetypes around here in Cleveland that that still exist. So that's good.
They're still around, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see, and I'm always grateful every time that I see somebody that's doing that. I know Charlie Mossbrook and Brent Kirby have been doing a lot of great things in Cleveland, and there's just when Gretchen was running hers in Akron, there's just it's still there. It's still there here and there for sure.
Was it?
I think it's really important to have for folks to have an opportunity to fail.
Definitely.
Like sort of a safe space to fail, especially, the more that you get established, and the more that you're kind of, having bigger gigs or more regular gigs or whatever. There's just not, at least for me, I find that there's, those opportunities for experimenting, or just kind of being out of your comfort zone, it's probably not going to be your normal gig, because there's a certain expectation from the audience, a certain expectation of the venue. Like if you come out and you just like really mess up a song or two, venues aren't going to really necessarily want to have you back. Audiences aren't going to want to come back to be like, oh man, that guy's show was, I don't know what's going on with him last night. So it's really nice to have that space where you can be out there and be like, okay, this is a brand new song. I'm going to mess it up, and here it goes. Or, here's some other random thing. Or, just the three of us have never been in a room together and we're all friends. And so we're going to get up on stage and sing this song that we like half know. But it's just these beautiful opportunities that, are not perfect, but allow us to grow, in a far deeper rate. And we don't have enough spaces. Yeah, people definitely can really confidently kind of just do whatever they want to do and not have it be so well rehearsed and so well like put together. So I applaud any of those places that are out there.
Definitely. There's definitely a thing about being welcome to mess it up, because then when you go to that regular gig, you've taken that song that you've messed up enough times that you can pull it off in that space where it has to be right. There was a couple other things I wanted to ask you about. There was the Parliament of World's Religion that you got offered to play. Can you elaborate on that? That's like an epic note to have. Like, from going from a Parma mic night to winning that gig to winning this gig in a way, like, how'd that come about?
So I've been doing a lot of interfaith work in Akron. There's an interfaith council, and it's just part of some of the peace work that I've been doing. And I had an opportunity I'd never heard of the Parliament of World Religions. It's been around since 1893, I think it was. But I'd never heard of it, and it came to the U.S., which it travels all around the world, and so it came to the U.S., and I was given an opportunity to go and just experience it, and it was such a beautiful, moving experience. I'd never really, I haven't had experienced anything like it, with 10,000 people that are all kind of on spiritual paths, and it was, everything from like the very high profile people and their traditions or their religions, or the famous people, to just general practitioners or seekers. And everybody was like commingling and mixing around, and just all of these ideas and all of these beautiful people all there for the idea of, we're one human family. How do we make this work? And how do we just try to uplift each other and put all of the other things kind of aside? So after that experience, I was really moved, and so I had applied and reached out to see if I could perform at the next one, and they invited me to do so.
Nice.
So
nice.
That was really amazing, and that one was in Toronto, and I'd never been to Toronto before. And loved Toronto. I was really excited about that. So it was a really cool experience to be there and to be, again, with all of those people and all of that wisdom and that tradition from, so many indigenous traditions around the world, to all of the major religions, to I forget how many were represented. It was 100 and some different traditions were represented. And you're just walking the hallways with people from all of these different paths, and they had all sorts of workshops and talks about things so you could learn more. And you just would maybe be sitting next to somebody at lunch that has been practicing this tradition or this lineage for decades, and there's just so much wisdom, and it was so beautiful. So I highly recommend that if that sounds interesting to anyone listening, that you check it out whenever it comes around. I doubt it will be back in the U.S. Because it travels around, so it's probably going to be a while before it will be back. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Well, we could probably all tune in digitally now, but that's that's so wild. Like to be on. Well, sorry.
It was just a big. I felt very honored because I'd have only been kind of practicing, and I've only been singing for 2 decades, and I've only been practicing kind of my own spiritual path of kirtan and yoga for about a decade. And so I felt very humble to be invited to be a part of, that sort of stage where people have just like, that's been their tradition for their whole lives and the lives of, everyone they know and their culture, and so it's just it's very humbling.
It's almost
to
like
be.
the spiritual open mic night. We got this new guy. He's been working on some stuff for a while. He's gonna come. Was it like
Yeah.
what that has to be, because like it has to be a humbling experience. You're around all these people, like you were saying, that've been practicing for decades, and they all have a unique and individual wisdom and practice that they've spent years and years and years perfecting and understanding. And like going into that, was it like a tune? Was it a couple songs? Like, how do you even prep for that set? Like, that's...
Yeah, I mean, I just prep by trying to be as open as I can, and whatever happens in the moment happens.
I feel like that
I think-
crowd would be open to a lot of things in general, just because like it's. But I mean, you'd been asked to go there, so they know what they're getting. Like, was it like a song, or did you like do like a whole like type of show? Like, it sounds like it'd be kind of like a tune or two, and then they bring people up. I don't know, but
Yeah, I got to do it too. I got to do one song in kind of the big, giant atmosphere, and then I got to lead a whole kirtan workshop.
Cool, man.
So, and that was pretty huge too. So I was excited about that.
Was there some of the kirtan heavy hitters, the Dasas, the Krishna Das? I'm trying to think.
There was not the Krishna Das, but there were
Okay.
some definitely some folks that have been doing this for quite a while. So, but
awesome.
it was just a beautiful experience. I really appreciate. I think one of the things I took away was that there was far less judgment than I expected. Just in general, everybody sort of, was pretty okay with each other, and everybody had their own little bit of wisdom or their own little way of seeing the world and speaking or sharing or whatever. And so it wasn't like there just didn't feel like there wasn't that atmosphere of, like, are you a genuine teacher, or are you, how long have you been doing this? Like, what are your credentials?
Gotcha.
It was just kind of like, they could view in like, is this genuine? And if it's genuine, then cool. Like, then obviously we can connect. And if it's not genuine, we don't, then we just kind of go to the next thing. But, which it was really beautiful. I've been to a lot of music conferences and music events where there's just a zillion bands playing, or a lot of musicians playing, and the judgment there is astronomical. It's usually everybody's looking around judging everybody else. If it's a room full of songwriters, then everybody's judging, that how you're performing or what you're saying. Or, that phrase wasn't what I would do, or that chord, or this is to this genre for me, or or this is, I hear too much of this person in it, or whatever. Or, if it's bands, everybody's just kind of looking out for how they can make the biggest splash. And so it's just really nice to be in a situation where it was like the only qualification was just like, are you genuine? Like, is this from your heart, or are you here for some other reason? And if you're here from your heart, then there was no judgment, no difference. You were just, smiled upon and hugged and welcomed. And
That sounds
so
amazing.
I love that. And ever since my first experience with that, like, that's been a huge part of what I try to bring to anything that I do, especially if it involves other musicians or, other things. It's just very much like, we have, enough judgment in our lives. Leave all that at the door. This is not about that.
And there's definitely with the music scene, with any, I guess, creative, there's going to be some like jealousy, some judgment. There's going to be those barriers thrown, especially when you go to like a convention like that. You're going to be like, they started that song with the word I. Like,
Sure.
There's going to be some stuff. But like that's super refreshing to hear, because like I've been to quite a few, into some conferences where it's not, where you think the mentality would be that, and when you find out that it's not that, and it's the more kind of judgmental stuff, you're like, man, this is rough. Like,
it's hard, and it's definitely, I mean, I think for folks that are, when you've been doing this a while, and you kind of, it's easy to look through judgmental eyes. It's easy to kind of look at something and be like, well, how did they get that slot, or what are they doing? that people seem to be excited about, and you just analyze things a lot as opposed to feel them. So whenever I'm in those atmospheres, I really do everything I can to pull myself to a state of kind of like, if I didn't know anything about this, how would I be feeling? Like, can I just sit and watch and learn? And, my favorite thing is like, I think I love being inspired. I love that it's like the positive side, like, jealousy is kind of like the negative aspect of the same thing. But like when you can be inspired, you can look at somebody doing something great. And instead of saying like, why am I not up there? Or how did they get that?
Yeah.
You can just watch it and feel it and be like, man, that made me feel something.
Yeah.
And I want to make people feel something. And so like, how can I push myself to make people feel more, or to make people feel the way that I just felt? And so I love those experiences. Like I just sort of, every time I see somebody play, like I kind of just have this mental thing of, I want to feel something, like move me.
Yeah.
Like I want to feel that. I don't want to be in my head thinking about like, oh, that chord progression was interesting or whatever. I want to be more of like, this is, music is an expression beyond words, beyond language. So take me there, and let's see how I can feel there.
I love that. I love that philosophy. That's awesome. That's a great mindset. I've never thought of like inspiration and jealousy being the yin and yang of each other. You know what I mean? Like being the shadow cast and that's really cool. Is this, so like, did you go into this conference with the Big Love Network? That's something you co-founded, right? Or did you come out of it with that?
No, the Big Love Network was in existence prior to the conference.
And for our listeners, what exactly is that?
It's so difficult to explain. Yeah. So, yeah, it's this it's a little nonprofit that some friends and I started. That it's a community placemaking organization that uses sort of arts and culture as tools to build community in deeper ways, and to build connections in deeper ways. And it started off as this kind of crazy idea. I was really inspired by some of the big transformational festivals. And I was inspired just on the fact that up to that point, what I knew of festivals was just sort of like a bunch of bands, and then you had like some kind of crappy food and like a bunch of beer, and that was it, And so to have my eyes open to the fact that there was this whole world of things that, there were transformational workshops, and there was a huge spiritual component to it. And, there certainly were a lot of drugs that people would partake in, but the other elements were really present. And I thought that was powerful. And I thought that, I was excited to see sort of where that movement was going, and how it was going to be inspiring and influencing people, and how people are going to bring that back into their daily lives. And one of the things that I noticed is, it's really easy to go into a beautiful place, or to go out in the middle of nowhere and have like a no rules experience and transform yourself in some sort of a way. But the coming back is always the challenge.
Yeah.
And, if we can't find ways to have those beautiful, peaceful, connected community experiences, like right now, wherever we're at, then it doesn't, maybe it's not the most effective thing to go out and to constantly be trying to find it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And those experiences are great. And I think we all need to have some kind of retreat. We can't be full on all the time, and we need those times to go in and to kind of check out for a little while and recharge and rejuvenate, however that looks to us. But anyway, so I was inspired by that. And so I wanted to create a festival like that, but in an urban setting, like downtown, and just have it have the constraints of being inside during the wintertime when there was little else to do, and people were kind of, there was seasonal depressions, and there just wasn't the connection that there typically is. Yeah. And so how could we build something like that? Is it possible? Could it be done? There weren't, at the time, there was nobody else in the U.S. that I had been able to find that was doing something like that. And so I thought it was an interesting challenge. So some friends of mine some friends and I started a little festival to do that, and it grew really rapidly. We did it for about 5 years, and after the second year, we realized that the things that we were trying to do were more than just a one-day festival. It was more of an organization and more of, we really wanted to see the transformation of our community. And you're not going to do that in one day, no matter how hard you try. And so, there's also only so many people you can reach that way. You're going to have, an event, and even though we tried to make it as accessible as possible, it's never going to be as accessible as you want. And so, we figured that that there were other ways that we could do things. So there's an organization in Portland called the City Repair Project, and they do really amazing placemaking, community organizing work, and it's all based on sustainable, regenerative community and just really powerful principles, and they've been doing that for decades. So we went out and got training from them and learned from them, and we brought some of those ideas back to Akron and have been working in the neighborhoods ever since then, doing those sorts of things. And we helped to facilitate a countywide sustainability conference, helping to try to find solutions for the sustainability challenges that face us. And
wow.
We do, we're involved in a number of other community initiatives.
Yeah.
We put together a yoga conference that is yoga and meditation that sort of shines a light on our local wisdom. One of the things I'm really, that I push a lot, I guess, is that, we have so much wisdom all around us. And so often we're kind of taught to think that, that it's not here, that, the expert is some guy somewhere else. Like, they're only in San Francisco, or they're only in New York, or, they're only in India, or they're only somewhere else. There's always somewhere else is where the wisdom is, or where the teachers are, and there are great teachers in all those places. And sometimes sometimes you cannot find that here, and you have to go to learn from someone else. But that said, there's also a whole lot of wisdom and teachers and talent right here in our midst that we don't know about, or that we don't interact with, or that we take for granted because they have they perform every Tuesday, so who cares, like they can't be that good, or their yoga class is every Sunday, so they're obviously not
I can go there anytime.
Shiva Ray or whatever, like I've got to. Those are like all these big teachers, and they're all great, nothing against them, but we just helping to acknowledge that we also have that here. We also have some really amazing people here in all the different forms, whether it's yoga or music. Our music scene in Northeast Ohio is, I think, comparable to anywhere else in the world. The depth of talent that we have here, the creativity, the community, and as I've toured around the country, I don't find it elsewhere. It's something really special, and we take it for granted a lot. So I just always try to make sure in the things that I do that we highlight, wisdom right here. And it's kind of one of the things that we've lost touch of, that ancient traditions and traditional and indigenous traditions, like they were very associated with the land, the very land that they were on is a part of them and their story, where they came. You can't really have the story of you without the story of the land being part of it. And we really don't have that much. I mean, there's some of us that have a strong passion for the town that we live in, but, aside from that, it's, if we had to, we could move to Chicago and then, still be fine.
And get those T-shirts.
And the story would, change all that much, but there's really something to be said about our the actual land and soil and trees and water that, embrace us, that we have grown out of. And so, there's a wisdom there, and there's a wisdom all around us. And if we can look to that, for that sustenance and for that rejuvenation and that inspiration, and it might lead us elsewhere, but it's always here. And so I always encourage people to find the local wisdom and leaders, and anything that we think that is amazing that's happening somewhere else is in some way happening here too.
Definitely. I think that was one really well said. That's like going back to the thought of like a lot of people go to like festivals or try to escape themselves to find this thing somewhere else, and they often seem to go in that loop, never really kind of doing that inner work, but going somewhere to seek that same experience, right? So a lot of people seem to like be in this kind of loop of it's not here, it's there type of thing. So I think that's important to try to find it, to bring back up what you said a while ago. I think it's important that to try to point out that it's here, and like even more important, like you're saying, this, you're right, the land here, everyone's here, everything around here like is just as good. And like I'm what that came to my mind initially is when I studied at Tri-C, and like the teachers there were like more intense, and like the classes were better than like going to, not the dog CSU, but going to a bigger school. So just to kind of like find like a way to like, even the teachers here are, so there's a quality education, quality wisdom found right next to you. And like sometimes you get so people get so blinded. I should say me. I don't mean to put you. I'm using my I words. So I get so blinded, and you're thinking it's somewhere else, and you're going to find this. I'm going to meet the guitar player from Spain because that's the guy who's going to teach me how to do the rasgueados right. And like you know what I mean. But that's a really well thought out point, and that's a really cool thing that your organization is doing, is bringing it all back home. That's awesome. And that. So that happened before that conference, like the start of this. And where were those concerts, or the first couple festivals at? Were they in Akron?
Yeah, they were all in Akron,
Okay.
all downtown Akron, in various buildings. And we got to a point where we outgrew all of the spaces that were available to us, and which it's a great problem to have. And it everything has a life cycle.
Yeah.
We tend to think that only we kind of grow and change or whatever, but events, organizations, business, all these other things have life cycles too, and they're not necessarily all meant to be like living forever.
Yeah.
And so it had its opportunity and it had its life, and we thought we did 5 years of that, and it seemed like it was time to sort of shift and do something. To let that aspect kind of go, and maybe it would come back eventually. Who knows? If the time and the need is there. I'm very grateful that we're not even attempting to do it in this atmosphere. I don't want that worry and anxiety of all of the chaos of trying to cancel all of the things.
Yeah.
But
so.
It was a really beautiful experience. I'm grateful it happened.
And I think that kind of goes back to your point of bringing out how amazing the Northeast Ohio music scene is, which is even like in a situation like now, a local is starting a nonprofit for gigging musicians to make a little bit of money digitally. You know what I mean? Like the virtual show thing has been like an amazing idea. I'm sure everyone had, but for God to really stick through and make it happen, and find a team and find a way to make it work, and handpick people who lost like not just like popular musicians, not that, but people who gig out all the time and have a significant loss of like work. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the fact that there's like this, not just this online kind of spectacle, but this online actually like help our people, help our players, thing here just speaks volumes about how the scene is. And you know what I mean? Even in times like this. Before I kind of segue into that, I wanted to ask, there was an award you got, the John Looney, am I reading that right? The John Looney Peace and Justice, or Justice and Peace. What was that all about? I mean, after you explained what you just did with the Big Love Network, it's starting to make sense to me now. But if you wouldn't mind explaining that a bit.
Sure. So we've been running Big Love now 7 years, I think it is.
Okay.
And prior to that, I had an organization. It's still around, but a lot of its work has kind of transformed into the Big Love Network stuff, but called the Akron Peace Project.
Yeah.
And that's been around for about 10, 12 years, something like that. And our whole goal was to try to encourage and facilitate peace and nonviolence in the self, the home, and the community. And it looked a lot of different ways. There's a lot of ways to facilitate that. And we tried to bring different practices and different ideas to the community. We had created, it started off as an Akron Peace Week, which was an official week in October for the first few years. And that grew to a point where there was a couple of groups around the state that petitioned the state so that there was an Ohio Peace Month, or Ohio Peace Week. So it grew to a big Ohio thing, and then in Akron we were able to move it. We were able to expand it to a Peace Month, which was kind of a lot. Yeah. But it was just a lot of things of at the time that I was creating that, I was very inspired by Gandhi, and it's kind of a cliche to say the whole "be the change you want to see." People say it without a lot of depth of meaning, but when you really contemplate that, meditate upon it, it's pretty huge. Like every aspect of everything you do. Like how can I, instead of just complaining about something or, putting the sad or angry face on Facebook, like how do I participate more in what I want to see as opposed to what I don't want to see? And so we tried to find ways that we could do that. And there were groups around that would talk about peace, and it was very much the outer peace. Like there's got to be stop the wars, stop the violence. Very necessary things. But then there would be other groups that were talking more about in order to do that, you got to have peace within. And so both are very valid, except for the fact that they both need to work together. And there didn't seem to be a lot of organizations making the bridge or spending comparable time on both things. So I wanted to find a way that we could help to bridge those two ideas. And, I certainly didn't want to reinvent any wheel. So if people were doing things, find ways to highlight and encourage them to do that, and highlight those bridges to happen between the inner and outer peace work. So I think those are the things that got me in front of the organization for the John T. Looney Peace Award. And John Looney was an amazing human from the Akron area that started a peace and justice studies course through the University of Akron, and he had a whole nonviolence program that he had put together. And his life was pretty incredible as a local leader. And so I was very honored to be even thought of for something like that.
That's amazing. Well, you're doing it, man. Like, I get super inspired by someone who just goes crazy with whatever they're doing, and then is all like, I'm doing all these different things. But man, you're doing it, my friend. That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Well, man, we've been at it for a minute. I've been like, this has been awesome. This has been I was really excited to talk to you. Before we wrap it up, have you tuned into any of the virtual shows at all? Have you checked them out yet?
I have. They're great. Yeah. I love what's going on. Yeah.
It's such a cool experience, and I'm super excited that you're going to be playing one, which is Friday, 8 p.m. What else can we expect from you? What we got going on? You got a lot going on, so I think there's got to be a lot from this, my friend. But is there any like recordings in the work? Any projects like in the I'll lose my words. In the recording, in the reel. God damn. I couldn't say real. But
I've always got something kind of going on. My band, The Bright Lights, and I have been wrapping up a record that's going to come out called Automagical. And we were shooting for mid-May for that to happen. Yeah. I think it might get pushed back a little bit. Clearly, we won't be doing any live thing around it, sure. But we've been releasing we've released 2 singles so far, and we're going to be releasing another one next Friday. So that's kind of the next music release. I've also got some more kirtan recorded music that I'm going to be releasing over the next few weeks. And, I'm always looking at recording and I began work on a few more collaborations with some folks that I might be able to hopefully I'll be able to get finished up somehow in this
There's time.
next few months.
There's
Next few months,
time.
yeah.
Was it? Oh,
Yeah.
man, I didn't even get. When did the band come around? When did you go from like doing the solo bit to the band bit? Was it just like during those early years were you always trying to do that? Would you say, or is it kind of like you got to a
Yeah,
point where?
I mean, it's been on and off. I still do the majority solo stuff,
Yeah.
but the Bright Lights have been with me for I think about 11 years or so, and
Okay.
My guitarist Charlie and I have been playing for probably close to almost 15 years, 14 years or so. So this is definitely the best and the longest band and friends that I've had as far as that goes. And prior to that, it was, I started off and none of my friends played music. Like I didn't know people that played music.
Yeah.
So it was just natural that I was just going to be playing music. And so I'd meet people through open mics or whatever, but I never really had a big sense of like the friends that just hung out and jammed all night.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
So when
came from playing.
So whenever I
basketball.
started, so whenever I started playing music, through the open mics, I had an opportunity to have some folks took me under their wing and helped me out. And when I first started my first recording, there was a group of studio musicians who were amazing, and they really took me under their wing, and so they played on my first couple recordings. And so it was really hard to go from, like some of the best players, like some of the best studio musicians in town, to then like the guy that like couldn't play a G chord in tune, and it was just kind of like, so it was really challenging for me for a while to even put bands together because it was, I had an opportunity to play with some really great folks. So it was,
so that makes that standard hard to
it was hard
to coach up to.
It was hard. Yeah. I would audition folks and it would just sort of be like, nobody's making the cut, and then getting to a point to be like, okay, well, where do I, what do I just accept and what do I try to coach? Like you said, like who is kind of at a point where I feel like they could make it work, and then we just work to get better. So I had several of those types of bands for a little while, and they were all, interesting experiences, and I've learned a lot of things from all of them. And I'm just so grateful for the folks that are playing with me now. And I definitely feel like, this is a little family, and we have a great time playing and making music and creating these records. And the stuff that we're releasing now is, I think, the best stuff that my band has ever put together. So I'm real proud of those things. And, I think it's always very fitting of the times. So I'm just excited for people to get to hear it.
Well, I'm excited to hear it, man.
Feel it.
I think it's if you can find that unit that believes in the songs you're doing, and if you guys can believe in it as a group, that makes such a magic connection between everybody.
Yep.
One other question on the Kieran stuff. When you're picking like chants and finding mantra, I'm losing on mantras. Are these things you've been chanting yourself, or are these things you've how you coming up with new stuff for that? I guess how are you coming up with new chants? Like, are you reading from a book and there's like this new chant that sticks out to you, or is there one you've heard someone else?
It's a little bit all of that.
Okay. I answered all your questions.
Definitely, yeah, I don't like. I definitely want to. If I'm going to chant it, I want it to be a mantra that I have done some amount of work with.
Gotcha.
Some of the mantras I do daily, and I have a much deeper well of experience with, and some I just learned about, whether I heard someone else do it or whether I read about it in a book or came upon it through some other teaching. Before I would ever chant that in like an actual kirtan, I want it, I make it part of my practice.
Yeah.
So I experience it and feel it a little bit and get some sense of what that mantra is, how I feel with it before I present it to anybody else.
I was going to say, that's one cool thing about kirtan music is like you can hear someone do the same chant all day, but each person's going to sing it differently, at least around here. And I think that's so fresh in a way. It's so cool to hear someone's interpretation of their own experience with that chant and with that song. And you get like, it kind of goes back to just hearing the music and hearing, I guess, in this case, the persona of the person and their journey with it. But that's cool, man. I'm excited to hear it. Well, Zach, dude, thanks for hanging out with me. This has been an awesome time. Do you feel good?
I feel great. Yeah, thanks. I'm honored that you reached out and you wanted to do this. Thanks for having me, and I really look forward to this show on Friday, and to hopefully at some point in time we all get to hang out together.
Sounds good. Likewise, man.